The topic is the sit-in movement, and of course we're talking to Attorney Julian Blackshear. And of course, Attorney Blackshear, let's allow you to continue our conversation before we head our commercial break.
Yeah, I really wanted to emphasize the importance of the fact that there were non-students, hard-working people, and leaders of the various cities that gave aid and comfort to the members of SNCC by putting up the bail money and things of this type. And again, you had high school students who participated in the demonstrations, and you had white college students that participated in the demonstrations. But as a general proposition, on balance, it was almost exclusively black college students who formed, organized, and structured the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, thus the name Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Now, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I guess I'm one of that rare breed that feels that he was called into the profession as opposed to choosing it. And so to that extent, I'm a natural-born lawyer, as my son would tell me. So I knew that was educational to me, to be a part of the whole process. And I now am at a position where I can understand the legal basis for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. When I was in SNCC, I knew why the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was formed, because of the pressure that the students in their sit-in demonstrations were imposed upon national government to do something. So they knew they had to do something. But now, as an attorney, I know the legal basis that they justified in doing it. And I'd like to address my comment to that. The 1964 Civil Rights Act primarily does a lot of things. It gives us equal employment opportunities, but what we're talking about now, the sit-in demonstrations, what it did, it made it illegal to discriminate against black people or in public accommodation facilities. In other words, everyone could participate in public accommodation facilities, not regard to their race, their national origin, religion, or creed. And that's a direct result of the sit-in demonstration movement by all the students in the South. Where's the justification for passing such a law? The argument was made at the time by the owners of these establishments. This is a free democratic country. No government can tell me who I can and cannot admit to my own establishment because it's mine. That sounds okay. But looking at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it says that Congress shall regulate commerce. And that is saying that Congress can regulate the physical movement of goods. In a union case in 1936 that had nothing to do with the Civil Rights Act, in the case of NLRB versus Jones and Laughlin, that clause was interpreted to mean not only can Congress regulate commerce, but Congress can regulate any activity that directly and materially affects the physical movement of goods, including racial activity. If closing down the Heart of Atlanta Hotel because of the sit-in demonstration adversely affects every pen, every toothpick, every roll of toilet paper manufactured in some other state that would have come through commerce to Atlanta, that hotel, if it had not been for the sit-in movement that stopped the hotel from receiving it. So you can see that racial activity is an activity that directly and materially affects the physical movement of goods. Now, once we establish that point, Congress now, under Article 1, Section 8, can come in and regulate that activity. They decided to regulate that activity by passing the 1964 Civil Rights Act and says that you cannot discriminate against people as it relates to public accommodation facilities. So now, I'm in a perfect position to understand why they felt it necessary to pass such a law, because SNCC was putting that kind of pressure on government to react. But now, as an attorney, I know the legal basis, the justification that was used to make such a law constitutional. It was based upon Article 1, Section 8 of the Commerce Clause.
And of course, that's why the Interstate Commerce Commission became involved. Explain how
Well,
that
now,
commission...
ICC is really created to regulate railroads, so it had nothing to do with that. But it can be used for that purpose now. You see.
Well, what about buses? When buses...
That's the freedom movement. Well, that comes much after the sit-in demonstrations. I think the freedom rides take place around by 1966. John Lewis is no longer chairman of SNCC in 1966. I think Stokely Carmichael becomes the chairman of SNCC in 1966. But let me tell you what's happening to SNCC, an unfortunate thing. The purposes for which SNCC was organized no longer exist because government has passed the law to achieve the very objectives that justify the organization of SNCC. So SNCC now is searching for its identity. And it's going to all kinds of different avenues to try to find some other justification to continue to exist. You see? And the activity wasn't there. So finally, we have somebody who comes upon the scene named Rap Brown. And his people, they come up with this radical, in my judgment, outrageous ideas. And SNCC had lost his identity, and so Rap Brown just transformed SNCC into an organization that was no longer recognizable by the college students and so forth that helped found it. Bond was no longer a member of it. Stokely Carmichael was no longer a member of it. And John Lewis and so forth. Rap Brown had his people to take the word nonviolent out of the actual name. So now it's known as Student Coordinating Committee. That indicated to the whole world that they accepted violence as a technique. Toward what goal? Nobody knows. But it was at that time, I was in the military. I was in Vietnam, I believe, in 1966. I was coming out of Vietnam. So I kind of missed that side of the revolution anyway. But Stokely Carmichael, when he was the chairman of SNCC, he's the one that coined the phrase Black Power. And that scared all of the segregationists. Now, it didn't scare white America. It scared the white segregationists, you see, because deep down inside, they had this guilt complex about black people anyway because of the mistreatment that they imposed upon them. They always worried about payback. They were always worried about, if you give these black people too much freedom, they're going to pay us back. And we never worry about that anyway. I'm not angry. I have no anger. And you see, John Lewis is a congressman right now. And Julian Bond, who is the son of an educator, Horace Bond, who was the president, first black president of Lincoln University private college in Chester County, Pennsylvania. You see, so we all come out of a middle class background, and we have no anger. All we wanted to do was demand that we have the opportunity to participate in the bountiful goodness of life that this nation has afforded to everyone.
The last 2 minutes, what would you say to young people today about continuing this legacy of trying to have justice done for African Americans, whether, you know, sit in or whatever? I mean,
first you got to identify what is the injustice. And racism today is very subtle. And it's been furthered by our own conduct. You have to ask yourself the question as black people, what is it that we can do to improve our own ability to operate successfully in the United States of America? Are we studying like we should? Are we spending all our time talking negative things like making our women look like prostitutes and whores in these BET video musical things and so forth? Are we guilty of self-destructive behavior? And then at the same time, we demanding the world to respect us. Well, the respect is something that has to be earned. We knew that. It's not going to be given. So until such time we check our own behavior and not engage in school riots, which I think has been prominent in the newspaper recently, then we can't demand respect. So I'm saying the next civil rights movement that takes place is to change the attitudes and the ways of thinking on the part of black people that leads towards self-destructive behavior.
Very good. And of course, Attorney Blackshear, let me thank you over the last few seconds that we have here for giving us that excellent information. And I'm sure that that is, in a real sense, a direction in which people can tie into to understand that it is a responsibility that as people of your generation, of our generation, took charge and wanted to deal with the injustices, that they too have some injustices to deal with, but first they have to work in their own houses first. Is that what you're saying? And of course, let me thank you, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another.
Get Comcast in HD TV.